Hey everybody, I'm Carah Burrell. Sometimes I go by Nuancehoe. I'm so excited to be here speaking at Thrive today. I don't normally do very, in-person speeches like this. I am more used to TikToks that are less than 5 seconds long, or like long podcasts where you are invested and you're just in it with me for life. So this is different for me. I hope this is also just a good meeting of all of us together at a time when Congress banned TikTok and you have no choice but to come and be in person. You can't scroll away from me unless I get boring, and I will know. So this is a picture of me and my family. I am going to go back to a lot of themes in the ideas around shadow work a little bit today, and coming into my own authentic self in the 4 years since I left the church. So, just like a Mormon would in Early Society, that's my family. And husband Aaron and I have been married for 15 years, and my 9-year-old, Blake, Cal, who's 3, and Glenn, who's 7, almost 8. So that's a big part of my life that people don't know about. And today I'm going to be talking about a lot of the themes around individuation and separating from our family of origin and our relationships, and kind of coming back to what we feel like is our true self for as long as that serves us. So last week, when I had a bunch of ideas bouncing around of what did I want to talk about, and I called up John DeLynn, and I was like, I could do this, and I could make him laugh. And he's like, Carah, if you want my advice, just get vulnerable and sincere. And I usually do take John's advice, but today we are going to F the patriarchy and get general and guarded. No, okay. No, we are going to get into a little bit of everything. So, man, that was a perfect introduction, because I'm going to be going through a lot of stuff really fast. And people, of course, are in different stages of their relationship to the church. And a lot of the things that I want to talk about today are true of me as somebody who's just lived my life. So, first disclaimer, okay? But I do feel like in any point of your life, you're going to feel like you're just going to look back and be like, that was so cringe. And I think we're always in a cringe phase. I've been in a perpetual 35-year cringe phase. I really want a ticket to Cool Town, but it's not been on the agenda yet. So until then, we're going to talk about some things I've sanitized for your education and entertainment. Okay. So if I had to put things down into a couple words of what my life has been like, if I had to summarize: family, laughter, kindness, first and foremost for myself, after leaving a high-demand fundamentalist religion, accountability for myself, so you also can't skirt some stuff, and finding the divine within myself that had been so outsourced for so long. So I feel like my relationship to my family, like I said, my family of origin, my parents that raised me Mormon, and then how I interact with my kids, my husband I married in the temple, all these different interactions and changes. A lot is going on, so everybody give yourself a break for doing what you can do. And then secondly, yes, the disclaimer is, this is again just true for me, and a lot of the things that I've noticed as Mormonism is kind of just like a placeholder in a way to me, of like Mormonism is, it's a narcissistic relationship, or Mormonism is leaving X. It's transitioning out of something, and I'm going to go into that more. So Mormonism just to me is one of the greatest John DeLynn calls it like the gift of the Mormon faith crisis, because the gift is for the rest of your life. There's things that you pick up that you never would have picked up if you didn't be committed to something so strongly and then know how to change your mind, right? So there's usually 2 big questions that John would have people ask him, me to a lesser extent, about like, how do I raise happy, healthy kids outside of the church, and how do I get my believing parents to leave? And when I would be like 1 year into Mormon stories, just like pretending that I had ideas to contribute and getting paid, and people would ask me these questions, and I was like, just because I'm next to John DeLynn doesn't mean I have a PhD. I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. And so this, again, is kind of the story of me figuring that out. And through the things I've learned, the short answer is about kids is same things that John talks about, or same things that I've just learned myself. That's like, what do you do when the answer is something that you're waiting to get to? It's like, look back at what the question is. Like, how do you do something that we are all embodied love with conditioning over it? Like, what do you do to a child? You love them. You listen to them. You do how you treat them, how you'd want to be treated. Like, love and listening is always going to be the first step. And the same thing with parents like mine who are in their 70s. I was raised in North Provo, over there, so not too far. And what do you do with parents who raise you so Mormon and are so disappointed when you leave? It's the same thing. It's like, I love them just as they are, just as their conditioning has made them be, and I love and I listen and put up boundaries when I need to. But I feel like those are the same kind of aspects. And so as I get into follow me here, I'm going to run through, this is one framework, because the rest of the things I want to talk about won't make sense. But if this doesn't resonate, it won't resonate. So I think of things in terms of consciousness, meaning like just these different components of your emotions and your thoughts and everything having a certain type of energy, whether that's real or imagined. I still think of things in terms of a consciousness that is just common to our life as humans. And all of those are just basically like the lenses, and we will be constantly changing those lenses. And when we're Mormon, we have an idea of consciousness and how to, raise our consciousness, how to be more Christ-like and what that means. And then as an ex-Mormon, you're constantly, for me at least, it's like, well, where is my next right answer? Like, where is the next consciousness? You're still on a treadmill, even though you're not technically on. You're like, I'm not on that treadmill, but you're still looking for a new lens to go through. And you're still experiencing all kinds of pain, and you're like, when does it just normal? When does it just level out? And the truth, obviously, of life is that life is pain, life is suffering. Princess Bride quote, I'm in Provo, right, guys? Come on. Wesley, life is pain, that kind of idea. And noticing how to find tools each time I go through different cycles. Because like I said, Mormonism is one thing, relationships with family is one thing, relationship with your spouse is one thing, relationship with your work is one thing, relationship with your kids is one thing, and then of course relationship to yourself and the kindness that you kind of grow and fertilize everything with, that can only foster the best tools for those best experiences. So that life is hard and it's suffering, but there's more lasting peace and joy to it. So the highest of highs and the lowest of lows I have definitely felt in the last 4 years since I've left the church. And I know that's not encouraging to first say that, like, the happiest of times I've had were, also in the Mormon church, and being able to, like, share space and be able to say those types of things where a bunch of ex-Mormons are just like, kick Joseph Smith in the balls. I'm like, and also, I really enjoyed my young women's time. So knowing that I've had some of the highest highs and the lowest lows in my 4 years since I left the church, and knowing the ways in which we are so programmed to not want to feel pain, and that our brain will always seek after these doses of pleasure sensors in our brain to just ward off, ounces of pain. And so once you get through a lot of the deconstruction process and there's still so much pain, you kind of succumb to some kinky, like, all right, give me the pain, I guess. And that's kind of like the kinkiness of shadow work. What's going on in there in the dark? Anyway, I talk on my YouTube channel about history and sometimes my life and current events and all kinds of things. But the reason that I'm able to do this job that I do so much and have such dark trauma stories told to me and be in this space but have it not feel like it affects me the way that I think a lot of people think that it affects me is because honestly integrating a lot of this darkness that where you're just like, instead of when you look at somebody who did something horrible, I see that as like, that's a part of the human condition of like how horrible things can get, what systems have been in place to make that person like that person. Because underneath all of that system, it's a child that wasn't loved enough or things like that, So to be able to be in this space, which I'm going to talk about in a second. It's really fun because I've kind of deconstructed without realizing. You never know when you're in it, when things, and you look back. So a lot of times, and honestly, like deconstructing in real time as I'm doing things. And just like anything, you feel a lot of cringe when you look back at yourself. And you're like, oh, that thing I posted 3 years ago that's still there on the internet. People are still like watching that. And you're like, I would take that. I would post it today. Why are people liking that? I call it when I was having that conversation with John DeLynn. I was like, do you ever just look back at some stuff you've ever posted? And you're like, if you like that, I don't even like you. Like, I don't like that. And he's like, yeah, and John, it felt so good, because John's been doing this 20 years, and he's like, absolutely, 1,000%. And I was like, okay, good. He's like, there's a Groucho Marx quote that he told me about, I wouldn't want to belong to a club that would have me as a member. And I was like, breath of relief. So, to summarize, so much of this journey is being able to play and be able to have fun and be able to do things that bring you closer to other people and closer to your parts of yourself, while also being in states of consciousness that are going to be resisting other things that might be in your shadow and might be left over from certain cultural conditionings that you don't even want to confront because you still like that thing from Mormonism, and that's okay too, right? And so, to summarize, basically, I think of like this cringe idea that you just got to resist the cringe, but if you resist the cringe gets you every time, And I just want to start with ideas about radical honesty and opening up to our past. So 2020, that was a year that did things to us. I lost my faith in 2019 with my husband. We both left the church for different reasons. And I was a real Jesus freak for a lot of my Mormonism. And I really loved it, and I really didn't have a bad time. I left because it wasn't a true thing for me anymore. And then about 2 months after we left the church, we decided to have our third baby. And this is me in June 19th, 2020, having Cal in my living room in a tub. And it was the only birth I'd ever done where I didn't believe in God anymore. And it was the most intense bonding moment between me and my son, to be able to do that without being like, Jesus helped me do it. Be like, we did it, you and me, this body, channeling some kind of... My uterus thanks you. So then it became a really, I didn't know what we'd be in store for. Round of applause if the third kid was just like, what? I thought 1 and 2 were easy. What is this third thing, if you know what I mean? Just something. So that's kind of where this is taking off. So this is way before TikTok. This is, like I said, we had just left the church 1 year previous to this. I felt like I was doing everything that, a good mom should do, a good trad wife should do. I mean, I was just 1 year out of the church, and I was homeschooling my kids. I was attending Operation Underground Railroad events. It's 2020, folks. I was taking my kids to the beach, and I was feeling like I was doing everything that a good woman should do. My 3 kids, I'm not working. My husband's computer scientist, probably, I don't remember his job title. He's making money, and I'm cooking the meals, and taking care of 3 kids, and I am tired. And felt like I was doing everything on an empty tank with no sleep, and no God at the same time, which I cannot... when you're a tired Mormon mom, you're like, at least God knows how tired I am. And then you take that away, and it's like, I have to tell people now. This is exhausting. This is another thing I have to do. So this is me 2 weeks after I had my baby. And this was me and my family. And at this exact beach time, 2 weeks again, right after I had my baby, been out of the church for a year, a big fight with my parents ensues, and it was a really painful fight because I felt like I couldn't be any more Mormon without being Mormon. It's like, I had a baby, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm like, I had a baby when it didn't even give me any more like crowns in heaven. Like, I did I felt like I was doing everything, and still was being told things about my spirituality that I was like, where are you getting this from? And it started to create a really big rift and divide. And then, about a month or two later, my husband's mom suddenly passed away. And so I'm on no sleep. I'm doing my own thing over here. And it really set Aaron into his own, existential crisis a year after leaving the church. So I'm struggling really badly with a lot of health concerns after my son is born. And went to a bunch of doctors, got checked out for dizziness. I was sleeping, honestly, sometimes only like 45 minutes a night, just constantly. It's ironic because around November 2020 is when I started making these TikToks, because my sister Allison in the back, she's really nice, and she helped me find a nanny that I could have some help paying for so that I could sleep. And all of the TikToks I'm about to show you are things I recorded in the bathtub while the nanny watched my kids. So I'm struggling really badly, and I go to live with my mom for a couple weeks in September of 2020. And I needed help that desperately. And we never really figured out what was wrong with me. I think it's just called unpaid female labor, LOL. But, so this is, before I started talking about anything Mormonism, this is kind of a funny omen. So this is my first viral TikTok, in which I say, if you can see the picture on screen, I say that I'm getting out of the car, and I see this crack, and on the pavement, I say to my mom, "Hey everybody, it looks like a uterus." And then my mom corrected me and she goes, "Looks like an upside down volcano." To which I say back to my mom, "What is a uterus if not an upside down volcano?" Can I just have a moment for a second? Because I've never translated anything I've said really on TikTok into a crowd. Again, you guys can't leave, they're banning it. And I'm like, that's what the internet sounds like. That's fun. That's what 1 million views sounds like in Provo on a Sunday. It's great. So I started expressing myself through memes through the course of my stay with my mom. This one you might want to screenshot. You want to break from a generational curse? Give your kids the right to tell you when you're doing something that hurts them without being defensive or dismissive. Just think about it. So I was just expressing myself through TikTok in the early days, just kind of dancing around talking about Mormonism. I noticed this aptly placed tissue box in my mom's bathroom that says, "Faith, family, friends," and thought, funny, this box knows the 3 things that make me cry and offers me a tissue. And so at this beginning stage of where you really feel a disconnect more than ever, it was the first time since we'd really left the church where I was starting to feel the most what I call in the shocked because this is messed up stage, where there is actual real life consequences when you lose friends or something so detrimental to who you are is I'm a good mom, or we'll talk about the Nephi effect in a second, but just when you're what the hell is wrong with you guys? Are crazy. I'm fine over here. And it feels like everyone's taking crazy pills. And it's a time in which, for me at least, was important to feel like I was, as I say here, my individuation from my Mormon family and culture is on display in real time. And that's where satire and comedy is really helpful for me, because in one sense, yes, I've had to take down a lot of my videos, and I have a much better relationship with my mom now. But at the time, this is an example of how I needed to express how strange and how much I've grown and how much I'm different than this place that I came from. Okay, so that's kind of the first point that I want to make. And at the same time, I wish I could, people don't know this, I could roast ex-Mormons just as much as I could roast Mormons. We all have funny quirks, So there's one of my very first ex-Mormon videos. This is a voiceover I did in the bath. And then the other one with my face on the right, you can hear my son nursing in the background while I record that. And so the first one is called an ex-Mormon testimony. And I like to satirize the entire Mormon culture and let people know that this is a thing, that this voice, this sound, these expressions, they still work if you just want to make fun of the ways that Mormons also are obsessed with their coffee. And so I was like, if an ex-Mormon gave a testimony, it would sound like, "Good morning, brothers and sisters. I'd like to bear my testimony of coffee. I know this is cold brew. I love my mug and beans. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nuancehoe, and I just want to get up here and say that I am so grateful for the blessings of coffee in my life. There was a time that I was addicted to energy drinks. It's a sin I have since confessed to my barista. But to be honest, I struggle. I struggle a lot sometimes. This path, it's not always easy. But what's great is that after I take my morning shit and I'm really tired, I just pour myself another cup of coffee and just be back at it again. Coffee is the light roast of my life, and I say these things in my name of my Lord and Savior, Latte Larry. Amen. And that's through comedy, in a way, my way of differentiating between where I came from and where I'm at. And then what's funny is we know that exaggeration is a thing, hyperbole is a thing, comedy, satire is a thing, but it's amazing how seen people feel through something simple as I just am not like this thing I came from, and how important it is to say that as you kind of go on a journey and feel recognized in that as you kind of find your way back home to whatever home, like I said, that can never kind of, whatever makeup that kind of can be. And this is the one where somebody said, "What's in that canister?" Because I was making my coffee in the first one. They're like, "What's in that canister? Is that sugar?" To which I said, yeah, so this person brings up a good point in the video. Yes, it is sugar, but if my Mormon parents ask, it is crack cocaine that I mix in with my coffee, made with beans that I got from my Mexican friend, Pedro, that I met at an orgy while working as a South American drug mule, where I supplied pharmaceuticals to 9-month pregnant women on the day of their abortions, to supply fetuses to Hillary Clinton while wearing a tank top. Because you know. So this quote from my friend Kyle, who stole it from Simon Sinek. So the quote says, "You have to say and do the things you actually believe. The things you say and do are symbols of who you are. We look for those symbols so we can find people who believe what we believe. If you're putting out a false symbols purposely or not." Kyle, you added that, right?
Yes.
Because if you're putting out false symbols, I put out false symbols all the time. Do I want to keep these pants buttoned? No, I don't. That is a false symbol you're getting right now of my commitment to professionality. Okay. You will attract people you won't be able to form trust with. If you say what you believe and do what you believe, you will attract people who believe what you believe. And so in the cringe, in the going through things, in the differentiating between where you've come from and where you're going, there's so much time wasted in still performing and still looking to what we feel like we always had to get love, and going after things we were told that we wanted, versus playing around in some darker spaces where we can let things come up. Not necessarily act on them, but at least know that they're down there, so that you don't have 17 different steering wheels all taking you in different places. And to really do that and attract people to our friend groups and to our new chosen family, I think the word symbol has been stolen from us. And now symbols are all kinds of new forms of free expression that bring people together. So I made a list of a few different things about what it really takes to deconstruct. And this is just a list that I stole from a video collab that I did with my friend Kyle, who's in the back. And just to briefly skim through this, to really deconstruct, think about embracing radical honesty, because if you are leaving the Mormon church, you already know how radically honest you have to be, and then there's still going to be places around every corner to still look into and deconstruct and take apart a Jenga tower and say, how do I really feel about this? And see what comes up. And that comes to questioning beliefs. Again, this is, as an ex-Mormon, questioning the beliefs you still have, still looking and challenging your conditioning, and still seeking all of the community support that you can get. You're here. Check that one off the list. These are just thoughts. Engage in critical thinking, confront cognitive dissonance, and when I was going over this list with Kyle, I wrote true self, and we're like, let's change that to true self, ? Because when are you ever fully actualized and truly at your final stage of development and consciousness? And to be comfortable with ourselves growing and evolving and knowing that we can still hold ourselves through those different changes. And then prioritizing authenticity. And I think a shorter way to put that is a picture I took of my husband and I and our kids hiking Zion's, symbolism, hiking. And I thought that, really simply put, when you leave a high-demand fundamentalist religion, it's something that has such a magnetic control over people that you have to become like a master leaver. You have to know so well the tactics that organizations or things that your psyche will go through to keep you attracted and stay magnetized to something that's no longer true or serving you anymore. And you have to become a master leaver of not just that, but so many things, and recognizing the patterns of when it's time to go, it's time to go. And then becoming a master holder. I think of that in terms of after you can kind of integrate different aspects and different parts that were pushed off and cringe, becoming somebody who can take those parts of Mormonism or whatever different places that you thought you were done with and bring them back in and integrate them. And for me, that's a long journey of a lot of different mixed up places. And I hold my family more closely now than I did when I was Mormon, which is such a brain F, because you're as a Mormon, I couldn't have loved my family more. That's what the whole thing I did. And now it's now that I know how to love myself, now that I know how to love them, it's that those are the things that so much of Mormonism says that they own. And you're just I hold that. So, and then becoming a master taker of space. Ladies, we get to have a voice now. And then I think leaving Mormonism involves trying on a lot of different things, is this me or is this me? And people are going to get worried and confused of so many different aspects. And that old phrase of let them be wrong about you. It really serves well. Just letting people be confused at the cringe that you might go through and the things that you're yeah, I guess I wouldn't have done that. But again, feeling confident that if you're not going to get radically honest about what you want and what you want to try and who you are outside of this oppressive system, then what was the point? It's going to have a lot of ups and downs, and overall, you try to make sure that the trajectory goes upward, but you don't really try anything. Life happens, and when you know that you are infinitely loved and infinitely kind and infinitely good, besides the wounds that come up for all of us, when you start how you reparent your own soul, you know that there are ways that you would never talk to yourself as a child, when you know all of those things about goodness and kindness, and starting from that place. And things are getting too serious, so I'll also get comfortable being a masturbator. Okay. See, I could have not done that, but I would have rather cringed and hated myself for doing that joke, and just been that's fun. Getting to the healing, and in the middle here I wrote, by being myself, I found myself. Differentiating from how I was raised in a comedic way and in a satirical way, and I've had talks with my mom since I left the church, and the attitudes that both of us have, feeling very misunderstood in our states of consciousness, are just going to be what they're going to be, and feeling okay with that. And just again, starting with the principle of like, I know how infinitely I love my parents. I love all kinds of humans. And if it wasn't for this conditioning, I know they'd be acting differently. And knowing how much they love me and how much they care about me and how they would be acting differently. And that we're going to be moving through these different states of consciousness. And so one of my very favorite books is called The Inner Work, highly recommended. And it's kind of like, it's got like almost a textbook feel to it of how it explains one of my favorite things about the spectrum of consciousness. And at the top it'll have like a 4 for I constantly feel this, and 0 is like I never feel this. And there's at the top freedom and happiness and love and inner peace and acceptance and understanding. And then towards the bottom, things like violation and distrust and loss and rejection and judgment and overwhelm and inadequacy. And, it's funny because if I were to look at this when I was Mormon, as I was like deconverting, I would go through and I'd rank myself, and I'd be like, all right, I'm feeling a lot of violation, heavy on the distrust, lots of loss, really feeling overwhelmed and heavy on the bottom ones, and then really flip-flopping day-to-day on the top ones. It really depends on the day. And even though this is like, a slide from the book that's just like a random sampling, of course, no one's going to have everything at any time. And my favorite thing about going through different life adventures and processes of just, loving yourself and who you are one day and your choices, to hating yourself and your choices the next day, and perpetually trying to figure out like who you are and all of this. I think just as jumbled as this thing, that's who we all are. We're all going to be jumbled states of consciousness. All of this has all helped me kind of relate back to things on this list about a healing process and addressing these inner wounds. And that brings me back to the ideas around the Nephi effect, which John DeLynn, I can quickly just summarize, that he talks about this on the podcast a lot, that if Buddhism talks about this life that involves suffering so inherently that it seems pessimistic, that that's just the way it is, but it is a reality to accept, and that in accepting that, you're able to acknowledge that by not thinking about things like the pink elephant, you're going to be thinking about things, and our efforts to suppress sexual thoughts often just make us exacerbate the initial conflicts of suffering. And John talks about the Nephi effect, where you are seen by your parents in a way that, strokes your ego and makes you feel like you're doing right in the world. And when you lose that relationship, confronting that suffering head on, that it's just not going to be the way that it was before. And I think that aspect of the ex-Mormon journey was really integral to me as I kind of had to self-actualize out of being around parents who just cried at my testimony at testimony meeting, and knowing that that wasn't going to be a bond that we had anymore. So as I said, in this, I'm shocked because this is messed up stage. I start psychoanalyzing my parents, and then started to really feel smacked in the face by a lot of things. And let me jump back to this one about releasing resistance. So a lot of people know that I left Mormon Stories after an episode with Rod Meldrum. I love this Rod. You've redeemed people named Rod. Rod Osborne. Like, Rod, I never thought I'd shout that. And a lot of people know that and think that I left for different reasons. And truth be told, one of the reasons that was so difficult was I don't often get confronted. I hear stories, I hear traumas, I hear all kinds of things that have happened to other people, but seeing some right in front of my face with my parents who believe a lot of the things, to a strong degree, that Rod Meldrum believes in. And one of those on the podcast that he was talking about, he's a guy who believes in the Heartland model of the Book of Mormon, very fundamentalist views while still being mainstream LDS. And one of the things that he believes in is apparently, we're talking about gay rights and issues and things, and he's comparing that to bestiality and to child diddlers. And it was a live stream, and getting to see what those comments meant to queer people in the live stream real time, and having something so in my face, that my parents believe this man, and they look up to this man. He's saying things that President Nelson wouldn't say, but that he was saying. And I just had a real world moment of just how sick and painful some of these beliefs are, that what I believe, like I said, is just, it's holding us back from loving ourselves when we express those opinions, when we have people, obviously, in the world that should be loved better than that. And in the moment, I was able to still see, like they say, see him as a child of God, but see him as like, you are a mink farmer from Cache Valley who thinks the earth is filled with water. You are a dude who says opinions. I'm sorry that you're that way. And I left, told him that I loved him, and I meant it. And it was that started a whole new process of really being comfortable with very much being different from my parents and from my family of origin, and being comfortable in all the things that make you like a loud woman, or like taking up space, or like all of those kinds of things. So the thing I want to end on is I did come back to Mormon Stories on a monthly basis and did episodes with John Larson. And on an episode about it's called why more Mormons or ex-Mormons or PMOs don't leave, John asked me why I started crying. And I said, why ex-Mormons get upset and get emotional. And I basically explained that in a way I felt like it took my family away from me, and that in Mormonism it teaches you that Satan took them away from you, righteous Mormon, and when it feels like it's just the opposite, and that the teachings that they had been indoctrinated with are now, they're not just teachings, they're a full-blown stop. They have these real-world consequences. They're not just teachings anymore. When you're in the church, you don't see it as much as you would if you're the one who's leaving. And now it's a full-blown stop between them fully embracing me and my life and what I'm up to. And now they have these million types of filters, of lenses that they see things through, where I'm not just their daughter that they're interested in, I am a daughter or son of perdition. And that's what always makes me cry, is thinking about how much love there is, how much infinite love. I can't stand the opinions some people have, but knowing how infinitely loved people are if we start there and we're able to express these things, how less people would glom onto these high demand systems that give them their worth, give them their value, when it's all of that answers, all of that can still be found within. And then you go teaching after teaching until you have 200 years of people saying that gay people and kitty diddlers are the same thing. It's just, it gets so out of whack, So why are ex-Mormons so angry? It's just sometimes there's this dogma and this conditioning that is bred over a lifetime that just separates us from the people that we love. And it was a painful moment of releasing this resistance. Like I said, on live TV. And it's a really interesting part of my journey to be able to kind of summarize all of that and share that with you guys, because it's not something everybody does, is kind of make connections about how important it is to kind of come into your true self and be very, very comfortable with loving people in a different way. Simply put, a different way than you ever knew that you could love people. It comes in lots of different shapes and sizes, and it's not a prescriptive love of what they should do anymore. Or how do you raise happy, healthy kids? And how do you, get your TBM parents to leave? It's the only thing that I know how to do is just hope that I'm loved unconditionally as much as I can love other people, right? So that is me. This is the things that I'm about, and hope that something I said helps you get in touch with yourself and find yourself. And I'm over time, so that's it. Again.